My guest in this episode of Innovation Insights is Stefan Göbel. Stefan leads Statkraft's activities in continental Europe to become a leading renewable developer by 2025. Welcome, Stefan.
Thanks for the invite, Charles.
Thanks very much for the presentation. How increasingly competitive and challenging will it be for you to develop profitable wind and solar in Europe in the coming 5 to 10 years? And what do you need to stay ahead?
Well, I mean, we can at least say that the early days of project development in Europe are over. So it's become a very, very professional industry with a very strong competition, which also means, however, that the market is consolidating, becoming less fragmented, and it needs to become less fragmented. And we want to be part of this consolidation process, obviously. Now, what does it take to be competitive? I think still a lot of the value creation is really on the ground locally. You need to convince local communities that the project makes sense. You need to get the land, you need to get the permits, you need to get the grid connection, all very local business. So that is really what we need to achieve over the next years in the near future to make sure these local processes are handled efficiently, professionally, and to, well, still build synergies across Europe while having a business that in its core is very, very local.
And how important is it for you, as a developer and an operator, to create or even deploy your own innovation in addition to that would be supplied by the OEMs of the wind and solar equipment? Perhaps you can give us some examples of software technology that you would think would play a part of reducing costs or time or improving yield and availability.
Yes. Well, I think it will be very, very difficult to do technical innovation and R&D that really differentiates us. We're simply too small in the global wind and solar markets to make a difference as a customer. I mean, that will be driven by OEMs. I think our core role will be about integrating all the technology and all this innovation, not only in the core hardware, but also on the software side, into an overall business model. And that has to do with, say, portfolio management, financing, on the sales side, route to market. How do we manage the real-time access to power markets? How do we bring balancing costs down? So I think it's about the totality. And I would probably be too bold to say that we really have found the golden fleece when it comes to the core project development and how to really make a difference. I think we can just do things a little bit better than others, seeing a pan-European global picture, being on top of kind of everything it takes to have a competitive project. But I don't think there is the one innovation that would really bring us ahead.
I mean, you mentioned in your presentation this kind of increasing competitive green on green competition almost with generators with zero marginal cost. How do you think the market will have to evolve to continue to encourage project development and maintain affordable prices for project finance?
I mean, in general, I think we need to understand that there are a variety of models out there on financing and incentivizing renewables. Of course, the traditional model is one that is set by policy, direct subsidies, feed-in tariffs, auctions, CFDs. And then there is the pure merchant model where market prices set a signal so that we invest. And people have normally seen this as a linear development away from subsidies and CFDs and government incentives towards market-based renewables. And yes, we see an increasing segment there, especially say in Spain, maybe also in Poland and other places. But I'm not sure if that is the end game. Again, if you have a marginal cost of zero, at some point, say in 2050, it's rather likely that the average market price will also be close to zero, at least whenever the sun shines or the wind blows.
Right.
So we will have to think about a regulatory environment, which in the long run, at least, also incentivizes investments and a maintained infrastructure, even if these market mechanisms per se no longer work.
So you pointed to the fact that maybe renewable assets get a price or receive a price which might be less than the average wholesale price because of this variability in this in the supply. And so for how important, I think you mentioned in the presentation, routes to alternative markets. How important is it for you to capture some of that end market or create new markets? For your
I think we are traditionally very skeptical to capturing specific market segments in the way of isolating them from the rest. We believe very much in power markets as a commodity market, as a competitive commodity market, because that is guaranteeing optimized resource use. And yes, those markets are partly local, but national, but certainly not pan-European, only to some extent. But kind of capturing or privatizing almost these markets, I don't see that as a major issue. I think we will definitely see island solutions and behind-the-meter solutions as a niche and as a starting phenomenon, but I don't think that will be the mainstream. The mainstream is simply rolling out tens of thousands of megawatts on a grid scale, on a utility scale, infrastructure investment.
And these
will mostly really the change.
And these will mostly be kind of virtual PPAs to large off-takers, or mostly sold to other supply retail businesses?
I mean, what we see, as we see our role, for example, on the trading business, is that we will offer long-term 10, 15-year PPAs, fixed price, for example, in Spain. And that will allow the developer to invest and get project finance in place. Now, what we will do with that position is a second question. We might just keep it on our books because we like it, because we think it's valuable in its own right, but we might also sell it to end customers, large industrials, end consumer companies, et cetera, et cetera. So we will manage that position. And I think that is a very, very standard way of handling commodity risk in power. But I mean, you can also compare it to any other commodity market where you would also try to have a risk taker in between, bridging different risk profiles and timing considerations, etc. So that is how we see our role in this market. Of course, there are some developers who have the ambition to access the corporate PPA market directly. What we think is that this is extremely difficult because the corporate doesn't want a wind profile; they want 24/7 power. And the developer normally isn't an expert in negotiating PPAs. And well, they have a project once in 5 years, maybe, at least the smaller developers, and that doesn't make them turn them into a strategic partner for the procurement of power. So we think there is a role for energy traders, if you like, as risk mitigators and risk takers and risk managers.
Thanks very much, Stefan. It's been a pleasure to speak to you, and again, thanks for your contribution to the
My
event.
pleasure, Charles.
And it was great to talk to you. Look forward to seeing your success in the next 5 years.
Thank you very much, Charles.